Chicago Bulls pick Michael Jordan.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
What your country can do for you. Float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. I am the greatest.
I want to welcome everyone joining us today. Whether you're there at Zion Woodbridge, or welcome all of you there at Zion Woodbridge. I don't know if you can see me. I can see you. Look far away, the camera does. And I want to welcome all those who are joining us online at our internet campus right now. Thank you for being with us, and everybody who may be in one of our sanctuary experiences here in Landover. If this is your first time at Zion Church or your first time in a while, we just started a new series last week called Legends. And the goal of this series is to look at people in the Bible, just regular, ordinary people in the Bible, who did extraordinary things. That's what legends are. Legends are just ordinary people who use the resources and abilities and capabilities that God has given them. And when the opportunity presents itself, they do something extraordinary with it. That's what a legend is. And so what we hope happens during this series is that people in this church and who are watching this online or wherever you are experiencing this would be inspired by the people that we study in the scripture, and that we would be motivated to use what he's given us, whatever he has entrusted to us, and when the opportunity presents itself, that we will choose to sacrifice and do the extraordinary thing to make somebody else's life better. And there's nothing, let me just put a disclaimer out there, there's nothing wrong with being legendary, particularly when you're legendary for the right reason. Because number one, it's going to bring glory to God. And number two, you're going to help a lot of people if you do legendary work. And that's the thing I want to focus on today. I want to focus on what constitutes legendary work. How do you know if the work you're doing is legendary? What constitutes legendary work? And last week, we looked at a lady named Esther in the Bible. And because time didn't permit us to finish the story, I left you on the hook. I hope some of you went and read the rest of the story so you could know what happened, or that you read it again so you could be reminded of what happened in the story of Esther. And today I want to look at a man named Nehemiah in the Old Testament. So if you have a Bible, you can turn to the book that bears the name Nehemiah in it. If you don't, that's okay. The verses will come on the screen for you to follow along. There's so much to cover in the context of the book of Nehemiah. I'm not going to focus on one particular passage, so it may even be easier for you to follow on the screens as they follow me as I go through this story. I picked Nehemiah today because I believe Nehemiah and the work he did was legendary as well. Nehemiah was one of three main leaders who led the nation of Israel on several post-exilic, what are called post-exilic missions. Post-exilic meaning following their captivity. The nation of Israel was very much like us as individuals. They were disobedient, rebellious, and sinful, just like us. And because of that, they suffered a lot of consequences, and one of those consequences was they were in Assyrian captivity in 722 BC, and then they ended up in Babylonian captivity in 586 BC. And once they got delivered, there were two major exoduses out of that captivity. And the first was led by a man named Zerubbabel, who led them on this journey to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. And that took place in 538 BC. And then in 458 BC, Ezra led the second group out of that captivity into an exodus and a mission for a spiritual revival. Ezra led a spiritual revival that took place. And then 14 years later, Nehemiah was used to galvanize the people, 40 teams of people, to rebuild the Jerusalem walls that had been burnt down and had been torn asunder and had been knocked down by their enemies. And his work was an economic work. He rebuilt the social structure and the economic structure around the Jerusalem community to strengthen them and to rebuild their community that way. And it was an amazing work given that it was done in just 52 days. It was done amidst opposition throughout the whole process. He had to deal with the mentality of the people who had gotten used to living a certain way. You know, it's hard to bring people up when they're so used to being down. And he had to deal with all of that and still overcome all of those obstacles and did this amazing work. And so he's legendary for the work he did. And so I want to walk through his memoir because that's how his book is written. It's written like a journal. He chronicled his journey and just highlight 4 things. I usually give you 1 point. I'm going to give you 4 today. You get 3 free ones. And I want to just, there's a lot of things that could be highlighted in the story of Nehemiah, but I want to make 4 observations. And the first one is in chapter 1, beginning at verse 1. It says, "These are the memoirs of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah, in late autumn in the month of Kislev in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes' reign. I was at the fortress of Susa," he says. And verse 2 says, "And Hanani, one of my brothers, came to visit me with some other men who had just arrived from Judah. I asked him about the Jews," those were his people, "who had returned there." Now, he doesn't live where the Jews are. He has this powerful position working for a king by the name of Artaxerxes. He is a high-ranking official. He is the king's cupbearer. And he asked his brother Hanani, who had come back from where his people were, how things were going there. So in verse 2, he asked this question. Go back to verse 2 for me. He says, how are the Jews doing and who had returned there from captivity, and about how things were going in Jerusalem. That was his question. Verse 3, "They said to me, things are not going well for those who return to the province of Judah. They are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem has been torn down and the gates have been destroyed by fire." Verse 4, "When I heard this," this is Nehemiah, "when I heard this, I sat down and wept. In fact, for days I mourned, fasted, and prayed to the God of heaven." Now, when I heard that, none of that happened to me. That's significant right there. When this man heard that news, it tore him up. I read it, and I've studied it all week. I've read it several times. It still doesn't bother me. And that's significant because what bothers you doesn't bother everybody, but you better be aware of what bothers you because on the other side of what bothers you is your legendary work. In fact, I want to stick a pin right there. Legendary work starts with a disturbed heart. That is the foundation of it. Something has to break your heart if you're going to do so, if you're going to be moved to do something legendary. It starts with a disturbed or broken heart. You can be minding your business in the palace of Susa. You can be doing well in Mitchellville, wherever you live. You can be doing well in your good job and you've ascended and you've had all this success. And all of a sudden you're exposed to something that disturbs you. You're exposed to some information that troubles you. Now, everybody else in the room could have heard the same thing and went on and kept eating chicken and watching the game. But you couldn't even eat after that. It has so upset you that you can't sleep at night. You cannot rest until you do something about it. That's how God sets you up to do a great work for him. It starts with a disturbance and troubling in your soul. That's the pattern of God. In fact, I can't necessarily tell you. In fact, nobody can really tell you but God what his assignment is for you, the legendary work he wants you to do. But here's what I can tell you. Write these 3 words down. I can tell you a pattern that happens, and I've been thinking about this morning. Here's how the pattern goes. First of all, write down the word design, and then write down the word disappointment, and then write down the word desire. Design, disappointment, desire. Design, disappointment, desire. This is how I see God at work in people who do legendary work. The first thing that happens is something that it's always something that he designed you to do. It is never something that you don't have a wiring or a gifting to do. God is not schizophrenic like that. He will not burden you to do something that he does not bless you with the ability to get done. It is always connected to your wiring, your gifts, your abilities, your talents. In Nehemiah's case, for example, the thing that he's going to do is organize teams of people. He's a servant and he's a leader. He is gifted to serve, but he's wired with loyalty. He has the wiring to be trustworthy and loyal, and that's proven by the position he's in. He is Artaxerxes' cupbearer, which means because his job was to sample food and drinks that were brought in for the king to consume. And the reason why he had to sample them is in case they were poisoned. And so the king trusted Nehemiah with his life. That's how loyal he was. And he needed that kind of loyalty and trust from people who would give up working and sacrifice their lives and risk their lives to do this assignment that God led him to do. And he was wired to lead. Another thing is the second thing is disappointment. There will always be something that disappoints you, something that upsets you. If you look back over your life at the thing God called you to do or the thing that you sense God wants you to do, it is always born out of something that let you down. Something failed. Something died. Something broke down. Something didn't come through. It may have been somebody who didn't come through. And whatever that thing is that God showed you, that it disappointed you, it frustrated you, it hurt you, it upset you, but you didn't stay there. While God was wiping your tears with one hand, he was strengthening you with the other hand. While he was consoling you with one hand, he was empowering you with the other. Because that design that he gave you and that disappointment he allowed you to feel was going to lead to a desire to do something about it. That's the difference between people who are legendary and who are not. And once he gives you the desire, and once he gives you that disappointment, and once you realize, because sometimes you don't even realize you've been designed to do the assignment until you make a decision to do what you have been disappointed about and what you now have a desire to do. Because some people have the desire, they're disappointed, and they're designed to do it, but they haven't made a decision to do something about it. And so you will never be legendary because you're just sitting on your hands and looking around waiting on somebody else to do it. When I got disappointed in church, let me tell you my story. The reason why I know what my work is, what I'm supposed to do that could be considered legendary work, is because what disappointed me was what I considered out of touch church. Out of touch church, what I mean by out of touch church is I would go to churches when I first got saved, and I was a teenager at the time, and I would go to services, youth services, and there weren't many youth there. That would disappoint me. And as the years went on, when I started being invited to speak at these churches, because I was now in the ministry, then they would disappoint me because I would be invited to speak at a youth event, and there still were just a handful of young people in there. And what disappointed me was I knew the church had the right message, but I also understood that our methods, were keeping young people out of church. And so it frustrated me and disappointed me that I would be in church services that would go on and on and on and on for hours and hours. And I just kept thinking, we could be done right here. This is a good place to stop. This is a good place to close in prayer. This is a good spot for the benediction right here. This is a good spot for let the people go, you understand? And that would frustrate me. And then it would frustrate me as well that we always had these, that we would only have come as you are casual dress in the summer. As if people didn't need flexibility in their attire year round. That's going to mess some people up, because even though it's an unspoken rule in church, there's a church dress code that is far too costly for the average person to keep up. Everybody can't be suited and booted like you and wear the hats like you and the outfits like you, because they don't work in that kind of stuff. So everybody can't afford to keep up with your wardrobe. Everybody ain't going to spend all that money, and nobody wants to wear the same thing every week. So some people just going to come Easter Sunday and Christmas and Mother's Day, because that's when they can show up with the same outfit again, because you made the outfit more important than the soul. That would frustrate me. And then the other thing, I'm just telling you what frustrated me. Then the other thing that would frustrate me is how disconnected the preaching was from real life. I would go to church and the preaching sounded like it was some underground movement, like it was some secret organizations. There were codes, there were like church codes and things that people were saying that meant nothing to my life or to the life of people that I wanted to bring to church. It was as preachers were talking in a different dialect. And in the urban churches that I was used to going to, even the tone was different than what was normal. The tone even seemed disingenuous to me. Preachers would get up and they would talk different than they talk anywhere else. They would go, all right, look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, oh neighbor, neighbor, We don't talk like that at the 7-Eleven. We don't talk like that at work. We don't talk like that at the football game. So why in the world do I come to church that's supposed to help me deal with real life, and I come up in here and you're talking in tones that don't connect to my real life? I need something that works for me the other 165 hours of the week, and for 3 hours I got to hear you say, oh, neighbor, I can't take that nowhere. And then you're singing and humming and talking in all these codes, and it's disconnecting. That's frustrating to me. So that's my testimony. What frustrates you? I'm not frustrated about the walls in Jerusalem, but I am frustrated about bad church. What frustrates you? What? Because, and you don't got to say it out loud, but whatever it is, on the other side of that is your work. So you got to be disappointed, then you got to have a desire. And this is what was the case in Nehemiah's life. He had the wiring, but then he was designed to do it, but then he got disappointed by this news from Hanani that broke his heart, made him fast, made him mourn, made him weep. And what I love about it, Pastor Jeff, when you look at, if you read through Nehemiah, you'll never hear God say, Nehemiah, I want you to go build the walls of Jerusalem. You never hear it as a voice from heaven telling him to do it. It was just in him to do it. See, what I believe, this is very important because some of you are waiting on a voice from heaven to give you your assignment. You're waiting on God to just crack open the sky and speak to you in a dream, or some prophet to come through and lay hands on you and blow in the mic and knock you down and tell you what you're supposed to do. I'm here to tell you that God will put it in you what he wants you to do. It'll just be in you, and somehow you'll want to do what he wants done. You don't even know how he snuck it in there on you, but somehow he put a desire in you to fix what he allowed. First, he broke your heart with what broke his heart. First, he allowed you to see. Give me your eyes, Lord, just 1 second. Give me your eyes so I can see. He gives you his eyes and gives you his heart and gives you his ears, and then out of nowhere, somehow you begin to feel what he feels and want to do what he wants you to do. And no voice from heaven. God never talked to me about preaching, but I'm doing it right now, and ain't no doubt that this is what I'm supposed to do because he put it in me to do it. Stop waiting on some esoteric, mystical, illusional, supernatural, spiritual, spooky thing to happen to you. If it's in you, he wants you to do it. So now he's got this disappointment and he's got to do something. This is the next point I want to give you. I'm all over the place, but I don't care. The next point I want to give you is not only does it start with a disturbed heart, but you got to act. Legends don't just get disturbed, they act. You got to do something. You can't just be sitting around upset about something. Wondering, this is what a lot of Christians do. They get upset about something and then mad at everybody else that they ain't upset with them. I have never asked anybody to be upset about bad church. Never. If you don't agree with me, that's cool. You didn't get what I got. I got an assignment now. You can help me change it, or you can look at me and tell me I'm stupid. But that's all right. I don't need you to be mad about what I'm mad about. I don't need you to be frustrated about. See, this is what people that don't want to do nothing, they'll send out emails and ask other people why somebody ain't doing something about this. They'll put it on Twitter and tweet it. Somebody need to retweet this. We need our government officials to act on this. Somebody need to do something. Or you put on your Facebook status, still troubled about what's going on the walls of Jerusalem, ... So now there's a thread about what you're frustrated about going on for hours and days and ain't nobody doing nothing. Here's my belief. Whoever gets the revelation has the responsibility. If God showed it to you, he's expecting you to act on it. You have to do something. It's not enough to be disturbed. It's not enough to shake your head and say, ain't that a shame? It's not enough for you to just be upset. Legends act. You must do something. You got to do something. Let me ask you 2 questions right now. What upsets you and what are you doing about it? What are you doing about what upsets you? You must do something. And when you get over to chapter 2, after he prayed first, then he acted. He prayed. The rest of chapter 1 is Nehemiah's prayer. We get to chapter 2, it's springtime, it's months later. We get to chapter 2, verse 1. He's standing before the king. He's about to bring the king his wine, and the king notices that he's upset. Nehemiah has never been upset in the king's presence before. The king says, what's wrong with you? You look troubled. I'm not used to seeing you this way. He gets nervous and he says to the king, you know what, why wouldn't I be upset? The place where my foreparents, my ancestors are buried, lies in ruins. The wall is torn down. The gates are burned. Why wouldn't I be upset? And so you know what the king says to him in verse 4? He says, well, what would you like me to, how can I help you? And immediately he started praying. He's praying to himself. Nehemiah starts praying to himself. And he says to the king, I just need you to let me go back and rebuild the walls. I need some time off to go fix this situation in my community. I want to do something about it. I need your blessing. His wife is there, the queen. They asked him, well, how long are you going to be gone? He told them how long he'd been gone. And the king says, I think in verse 6, you have my permission. You can go. That's action right there. It's not enough to feel. You got to act. You got to act. It's not enough to have just a disappointment. You got to have a desire, and you can't stop a desire. You got to make a decision to do something. And once he decided to do something, here's my third thing. Third thing you got to do is you got to get people to support your legendary work. Legendary work requires support. You cannot, whatever you're going to do that's going to change the world or change people's lives or change an individual's life is always going to require help because the assignment is always bigger than you. It is always bigger than you. You cannot just act alone, which means, so now Nehemiah's got to do something. First thing he does first he gets favor from the king. He's got favor with his boss. That's why it's good to be a good employee because you never knew when you're going to need a recommendation letter. He starts asking for letters. He says, King, I need a letter from you because I'm going to have to travel through some foreign provinces and I'm going to have to cross some borders and I need you to tell the rulers there to let me through safely. He says, you got that. I'll give you that letter. He said, I need you to send a letter to the timber company because we need some materials to rebuild this wall. Got you. I'll do that. So he got two letters. He got a letter going to the timber company, got a letter going to these public officials, letting them pass through safely. Then he says, the king gave me even more than that. I think it's verse 9 or 10 down in chapter 2. The king even gave him horsemen and armed soldiers to protect him along the way. He got more than he even asked for. Then he gets to the place, he surveys the land, he does this evaluation because you got to do your research, you have to do your due diligence. He gets there, and in verses 16 to 18, he meets with the public officials there. He meets with the Jewish priests and the nobles and the authorities there. And he gathers them together and he gives them a pep talk. He says, I got the king's backing and the hand of God is on me. Look at this situation. We can't leave the wall like this. We can't leave our families vulnerable like this. We can't leave this situation the way it is. So here's what we have to do. We've got to do something about this. And you know what? When he finished the speech in verse 18, you know they said, let's rebuild the wall. Let's do it. You know, he had to really give them a motivating speech to get them to do this. And he's got them on board now. He's got them moving in the right direction. Why? Because it's going to take a team to make your dream come to pass. It's going to take a team to get you to accomplish the legendary work you've got to do. Which means you're going to have to be able to share your vision and burden with people. You have to talk to people about what God has laid on your heart. Let me tell you what's going to happen. Some people are going to support you. Some people are not going to support you. Some people are going to support you now. Some people are going to support you later. The first dinner we had around Zion Church, there were 4 couples there, Vicky, myself, and 3 other couples. 2 of the couples started helping us immediately. The other couple says, no, it's not our time to do that. It's interesting. I just realized that the other couple now is a part of this church, and the husband is about to take over this campus next year. His name is Larry Page. He didn't help us then, but God knew what time he was supposed to come back and help us. You never know how God's going to use it. But you know what I did? It didn't matter who didn't help, who did help. I just kept telling my story. I knew I couldn't do it alone, and I also knew that I couldn't. It wasn't enough to just be frustrated. I told you earlier how frustrated I was about church. So what I had to do, I had to start a church that didn't last for 2 hours. That's the first thing I did. We can't go 2 hours. First of all, I can't do this for 2 hours because I will get bored. I just get bored too quick. Now I'm really bored now. You ever go to church after you've been going here for a while and then try to go somewhere else? You're just like a little 8-year-old, and you just be squirming and stuff. When somebody gonna preach? We can't do 2. 2 hours is too long. So we had to do that. And then we had to have a place where people could come dress respectfully, but casually. Whatever you got, that's what you wear. And then we had to have a service where every message seemed like a conversation. It needed to be like like we just ain't nobody in the room but us. That's a compliment to me. Now that you heard a great sermon, when you come to me and say, I felt like you were talking to me. That's it right there. That means I'm talking in a language you can relate to. I'm talking about a life issue that you can deal with, that you can connect with. And so you have to do something about the problem that you're disappointed about. Otherwise, you're a part of the problem. Just another part of the problem. Here's one more thing I want to give you. One more thing, and that is, in spite of the fact that he had the hand of God upon him and was in making progress and all these great things were happening, we see that at every turn there was opposition. Opposition is a part of legendary work. At the end of chapter 2, around verse 10, Sanballat and Tobiah are upset that somebody's coming to rebuild these walls. It's interesting. He's going to do a good job, but he's facing opposition. Whenever you go to help somebody, even though you're bringing help, you need to know that hell is there too. I've always been amazed by this story in the Bible where David was a shepherd. When David was a young shepherd, and he wasn't even lead shepherd. He was following the sheep. He was cleaning up behind the sheep in the rear of the sheepfold. And Goliath was intimidating the armies of Israel, and nobody wanted to fight Goliath. Goliath said, "I'll fight anybody on y'all side." And Goliath was a big giant. Nobody wanted to fight him. And David went to King Saul and said, "I'll fight him." And King Saul looked at him and said, "Man, come on now. He will tear you apart." And David says, "Let me give you my resume to prove that I'm ready." He says, "I fought a bear before and I beat the bear. And I fought a lion before and I beat the lion. So he'll go down just like the other ones." And we're back and read the story about that lion and the bear that he fought. In each occasion, the lion and the bear was attacking a sheep. It wasn't like David just walked up on a lion and bear. The lion and the bear was attacking the sheep. He was protecting the sheep. But what happened was when David delivered the sheep from the enemy that was attacking it, in both occasions, what was attacking the sheep turned on the shepherd that was trying to attack him, that was trying to save him. And what you have to realize is whenever you go into a situation to help somebody out, whatever was on them will jump on you. So don't think that this is going to be easy. Some people have a real problem with this. They're saying, "Well, I'm just trying to help the Lord. I'm just trying to do the Lord's work. Why it got to be so rough on me? Why all hell got to break loose in my life?" Let me tell you something. All hell going to break loose in your life anyway, whether you serving the Lord or not. So you might as well do something for the Lord while you got to go through trouble anyway. You might as well do something for the Lord on the way. Opposition came. Sanballat and Tobiah are upset that somebody's coming in to try to empower these impoverished people. Some people have difficulty when they see the people that are under their control getting empowered. And I don't know what disturbs you or frustrates you. Maybe it's poverty. Maybe it's orphans. Maybe it's illiteracy. Maybe it's obesity. Whatever it is that frustrates you and disappoints you, and you have a desire to change, you got to make a decision to change it. The opposition came in chapter 4. They started mocking in verses 1 to 3. They started mocking the work. People will make fun of your work, say, "That ain't going to work," laughing at you. "That's stupid. You can't save the world, Vivian." This is all the kind of negativity to try to defame and deflate what you're doing. And sometimes the opposition will come from without. Sometimes the opposition will come from within. One of the most powerful moments in this story is in chapter 4, verse 10. In chapter 4, verse 10, now it's internal opposition. Somebody on one of the people of Judah began to complain. This is somebody on his team. These are the people building the wall. They said, "The workers are getting tired, and there's so much rubble to be moved. We will never be able to build the wall by ourselves. Too much rubble." See, this place was a disaster. It was rubble and debris everywhere. And this person says, "It's too much rubble, we cannot build. Too much rubble, we cannot build." That was a true statement. Because you cannot build on top of rubble, you must remove rubble and debris in order to build. That's a preaching moment right there. Whenever growth stops, you got to see what needs to go so that the thing can grow. What's impeding? Who's impeding growth? What do you need to get rid of? Who do you need to get rid of so that growth can take place? And what I love about Nehemiah in verse 14, here's what he says. You all say, and there was violence, all kinds of attacks are coming. In verse 14, he says, "I looked over the situation. I called together the nobles and the rest of the people, and I said to them, 'Don't be afraid of the enemy. Fear not. Remember the Lord. Focus on the Lord, who is great and glorious, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes.'" He says, "Don't be afraid. focus on God, fight for your families. In spite of the opposition, they kept on building. So now, let me give you a couple takeaways. I don't just have one takeaway because I got 4 points. So basically, your takeaway is contingent upon where you are on this continuum. If you are in a place where you are not disturbed in your life about pretty much anything, nothing disturbs you, nothing upsets you, then maybe you need to pray, you know what, God, I need you to upset me. I need you to break my heart with the thing that breaks your heart. I need you to so guide me emotionally to the thing that's closest to your heart so that I'm no longer comfortable just being comfortable. Disturb me. Disturb my heart. Then if your heart is already disturbed and you haven't done anything about it, your next step is to do something. Your takeaway is to act now. You're already upset. You've already seen the problem. You've been aware of this problem for years. You've written about it in your journal. You've talked about it periodically. Every time it comes up, you're sensitive to it. Now you got to act. What does that mean? Do something. Write the letter. Make the phone call. Fill out the paperwork. Save the money. Write the check. Take the class. Engage in the seminar. Write the book. Read the book. Do something. You got to do the next thing. You have to do something, my friend, because you're not going to make a difference just with your thumb in your mouth, wondering who's going to do something. Who got the information? Who got the inspiration? That's the person that's supposed to make the move. Maybe you've already been disturbed and maybe you're acting, but you're saying, man, I'm acting, Keith, but we're not making any progress. It's not growing. Here's what you need to do. It's not growing. You're not making any progress. You got to check your team out. Do you have enough support systems? Do you have the favor of authority in your life like Nehemiah had? He had the favor of authority given his blessing over his work. He had support systems. He was able to appeal to resources and companies to help with the financing of it. You got to talk. Watch this. You got to make sure all the rubble's out the way. Who needs to move now? Who's impeding the work? Who needs a talking to? Who needs to be re-engaged? What needs to be moved? No, if progress is stopped on the work that you're supposed to be doing to make a difference in, then you got to look at your team and you got to look at what's in the way or who's in the way and make the adjustments. Am I making sense to y'all in here? And the fourth thing is maybe you've been building your team and you've been doing the work and you've been disturbed, but you're tired, you're weary by the opposition. Keith, I'm facing one challenge after another. Every time I try to do something, I hit a wall. I can't move forward. Here's what you got to do. You know what you got to do when you face opposition? You keep on building. I read a book by Chuck Swindoll one time. It was called Hand Me Another Brick. It was all about building the wall in your life, finishing the work. You know, that's what masons do. They take the brick, and what's that stuff they put on it? What is it? Mortar. That's what makes it stick? All right, I'll go with that. Take the brick, put the mortar on. You know what? Hand me another brick. Just keep on building. It's not about you anyway. The opposition, you know what? Even after they built the wall in chapter 6 and all they had left was to hang the doors, there was still opposition. God blessed them, but he never let the opposition stop. I think opposition doesn't injure our work. It actually improves it because it keeps us close to God and it makes us focus on the work more. So here's what we're going to do. Get disturbed if you're not disturbed. God disturbed me. Start acting if you're already disturbed. Build your team. Get the resources that you need to make a difference. Don't stop. And no matter what opposition you're facing, keep on building. Keep on. Hand me another brick. Suffering, accusations, criticism, hand me another brick. Whoever's laughing now won't be laughing later. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for these truths. May they be more than things we just hear and understand. May they be things that move us to action. I pray that people are moved to action, moved to assembling teams, moved to overcoming opposition and fighting through. Move us forward. May we do things that will make a difference in the lives of people. May we utilize what you've blessed us with by way of resources and opportunities and do things extraordinary for your glory in Jesus' name. Amen. It is my privilege during this series, as I've challenged all of you in church, to identify some legends in your life. People who are legendary to you, people who just have made a big, significant impact, positive impact in your life. And just thank them. Invite them to church maybe during this series. And so what I've done, had the opportunity to do, was to talk about a couple of people in the life of Zion Church who have been there for me. And today I want you to see and watch this story about another legend who is truly a legend in my life and in the life of this church. Check this out. His dedication to spending dedicated time with God in prayer and worship and in the Word is still a standard that I've yet to attain to.
He has such a great heart, and what I like about Jeff is that I have the tendency to sometimes feel invisible, but Jeff always acknowledged me, like he always saw me.
Pastor Jeff is a very gentle person, a thoughtful and caring person, and he's a great listener.
He has been like a ministry coach for me since I came on staff in 2006.
He just has a funny way of making sure we stay on track. You know, sometimes we could get crazy in the meetings, but he always kind of brought us back together.
If you walk past Jeff's office anytime and you'd see a certain time of day, he'd be doing his devotions. He would be reading, he's reading through the Bible.
Just a courageous leader, prayerful, God-fearing.
He's just a strong guy. No matter what his challenges have been, he's been able to persevere through them.
He was a prayer partner, definitely. We would both have our separate prayer times, but we would hold each other accountable.
You talked about taking the high road, and to this day, people still talk about that. I'm gonna take the high road on this one.
He speaks to you from his experience. He speaks to you from a place of understanding.
He was a great counselor of married couples, and he was self-taught. I asked him one day, I said, I need you to counsel couples. I don't have time to do it. And he had never done that before.
Pastor Jeff believes in marriage, and he believes that, it is an institute that God has formed two people together with, and he's just very passionate about keeping married couples together and showing them how to love and care about one another.
His personality was not one that could be made small. When he did speak, he spoke for a reason, and he meant every single thing that he said.
He has wisdom beyond his years. He will read a lot, and he could just retain so much of that information.
I just respect him as a person. Even now, he's an inspiration to me personally. He's gotten to the point where he can go to Zion Woodbridge and help break down, the furniture and the equipment.
He always left an impact on you. You walked out knowing you were fed and that the man truly was in love with God.
Very thoughtful. I think that's probably the best word I could use to describe him.
His example to me as a follower of Jesus is what has impacted my pastorate the most. You know, somebody asked me while we were shooting the video, how come you ought to interview me? I had something to say about him. And you know, there's so many people in this room who have been blessed by your life and your leadership. And up until September 22nd, 2009, you taught us how legends lead through service. And since that time, you've been teaching us how legends live through suffering. Yeah. So, for those of you who don't know, Pastor Jeff had a stroke in 2009, and he has aphasia and apraxia, and we're watching to see how God takes a great man through the fire. So, thank you for your family. His parents are here. Jackie, his right hand. God bless you, Jackie. You're an angel. This just simply says, Jeff Simmons, thank you for your service to the Lord and the Zion Church, October 14th, 2012. And we love you and value you and appreciate you so much, man. Love you, man. Love you, man.